The voice of college football at Fox, your friend and mine, just covered his 10th draft, Joel Klatt.
What's up, man?
Big Noon Conversation Series. You've been traveling around the country.
It's been a busy spring.
Very busy for you.
Yes, it has. I'm sorry I haven't stopped by. I know, but I wanted to get in. I knew. I was like, listen, I got to go in. I got to say hi to my son traveling around. So how are you?
Good, Father. So, quite a kerfuffle last week when I suggested, I believe rightly so, that as USC moves into the Big Ten,
yep,
I would move off Notre Dame. I think you're going to have these...
From a schedule standpoint?
I mean, I got Penn State, Wisconsin, Oregon, Washington, Ohio State, Michigan. I think I can live without a November game on 11 degrees in South Bend, Indiana. But it's a bigger picture. My picture is if you want to compete for a national championship, and Nick Saban's got this, manipulate your schedule as much as you possibly can.
The parts that you can control.
Yeah, put a bye in front of the big game. Last year Michigan won a natty. They played UNLV, Bowling Green. It's like,
well, yeah, Georgia and Michigan's schedule last year was weak, and now both of them are going to have really tough schedules this year. But you're talking about USC, talking about controlling the schedule. I'm going to go on a different wavelength and layer than what you just did.
Okay.
I would love if we stopped allowing individual teams to control their own schedule. The Detroit Lions don't build their own schedule.
Right.
And the New York Giants don't build their own schedule. And I don't think that we should do it in college football either, in particular as we're moving into an era where we're going to have a 12-team playoff and we're going to have to rate these teams somehow against one another for inclusion into the most important now tournament in college football, which is going to be the college football playoff. I firmly believe that we need some sort of agreement on how many conference games we're all going to play within our conferences, and then the non-conference games need to go into a pool, and we need to start playing each other more often. So it's not USC's job to move off of Notre Dame as much as it is college football's job and some overarching governing body scheduling, and in particular for parity, so that the best teams have to play the most difficult schedules and the worst teams have some break, in particular in their non-conference slate. That's what I would like to see. I can't stand what we do right now in college football, which is allowing these athletic directors to build their schedules 10, 12, 14 years out, in the back of a cigar bar. Hey, you want to play in 2033? Sure. We won't be there. Ha ha. What are we doing, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting point that you're making, and I know that we're probably making a separate point, but USC, I don't think, needs to play Notre Dame every year. I would like to see college football in general, not just USC, start to schedule those types of games that then everyone would have to participate in.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I want to talk about USC for a second because as America's honesty broker, I see a lot of negativity thrown at the Trojans. And I said this to somebody yesterday. They took a 4-win program with 20 Division I players. If they beat Tulane, which they didn't and deserve criticism, they win 12 games. Last year they stunk. But I actually say to all those people that think USC's never going to turn it around, they only have to do one thing this year if you look at their schedule. And you know what that one thing is? And it could propel them to the playoff.
Yeah.
And what is that one thing?
If they can beat LSU in their opening week in Las Vegas, so it's a neutral site, more on the West Coast, there's going to be a lot of USC fans there. If they beat an LSU team who's trying to replace Jaden Daniels, 2 first-round wide receivers, and OC.
And their defense was
a mess. And their defense was
year.
terrible. By the way, USC's defense was terrible. They are very similar programs right now, I would argue. And I think that you can make an argument that because of Lincoln Riley's history and because of what Miller Moss did in the bowl game in the Holiday Bowl and the skill position players that they have, like Zachariah Branch on the outside, with D'Anton Lynn coming in as the defensive coordinator, I'm bullish on USC,
so
and I know that makes you really happy.
Michigan's a rebuild. They don't play Ohio State or Oregon.
Which is a great schedule.
And their Big Ten road games, there's a lot of Rutgers in there.
Yeah. If they beat LSU, there's a really good chance that USC's going to the playoff.
Oh, that hurts
Because
people.
Remember, you don't have to be in the top 4
That's
right now. You go 9-3 in the Big Ten or the SEC, you're going. You're going. Okay? They're going to each get probably 4, maybe 5 teams. Okay?
Yeah.
Not each 5, but like you could get 5 if one of those conferences go that direction.
My guess is the SEC will start with 4 right off the top.
Probably.
And I think so if Ohio State and Oregon, in my opinion, the two best teams get in.
Yeah, it's like Texas and Georgia in the SEC. Okay. Those are the two best teams, and then the two best teams in the Big Ten.
You going to tell me USC can't play with a third best team in the Big Ten?
Well, so then you're talking about the next three in each conference. All right, so let's talk about the next three in each conference. In the Big Ten, you'd be talking about USC. You'd be talking about Michigan. You'd be talking about Penn State.
Yeah.
And by the way, and I know this is an outside one, watch out for Nebraska. They could be 8-1 if you look at their schedule. If you look at the SEC, now you start looking at a team like watch out for Missouri.
Ole Miss.
Watch out for Ole Miss. And then you've got some combination there of Bama, OU. I don't know. OU's schedule is terribly difficult. But what's Alabama going to be with Kalen DeBoer? It's also fascinating, but we come back to that point about USC and LSU. It's going to propel the trajectory of those two conferences in terms of the playoff conversation, in terms of those next level teams, how many are getting in. There's a good chance if they beat LSU, they're going to the playoff.
So when Arch Manning was in high school, I was assured he was the next Peyton, and he may still be. But right now, Texas has Quinn Ewers as their starter. Arch Manning's the backup. It's a weird tightrope because the Mannings are American royalty and quarterback in this country.
Yeah.
It's an interesting tightrope. This team is loaded. I think they have a chance to play for the finals. I love Sark, but he has a tendency to lose a game he should win every year, every place he's been.
Like OU last year.
Yeah. Where are you on Texas and a chance to be a viable national championship contender?
Texas is easily one of the four best teams in the country
right
now.
No question. Talent, no question.
No doubt about it.
Huge up front.
Anytime I get asked about Texas by anybody that is not involved with the program, they all talk about Arch. I go to Texas, which I did for Big Noon Conversations, by the way. Sat down with Steve Sarkisian. You're going to hear that this summer on my podcast, Joel Klatt Show. Anytime I go to Texas and I'm around the program, all they talk about is Quinn Ewers. I think that there is an overblown perception of how close the quarterback battle is. That doesn't mean Arch isn't good, because he is. And there's a good chance that at some point he's going to have to play. Ewers has been hurt in his career.
And they're going to blow some people out too.
And they're going to blow some people out. And by the way, you're going to have to play 16 games. You know, like the season is lengthening out. There's a good chance that all of these backups at all these schools are going to have to play.
Yeah.
But I do find it fascinating. Everybody that asks me about Texas is like, well, when's Arch going to be ready? And I go down to Texas, and I talk with Steve Sarkisian. I talk with Quinn Ewers. I talk with the players. I talk with everybody around there. And all they talk about is Quinn Ewers. That's all they talk. He's their guy. And I think people need to really wrap their heads around that. And he is going to be a viable Heisman Trophy candidate. He's one of the reasons why they will be, again, one of the best teams in the country. If they can rebuild their defensive line, they're going to be right back in that position. I do find that second week game interesting and fascinating because of what I questioned for Texas going into the season, which is their defensive front seven and their defense overall, because of losing some of those defensive linemen that they did in the draft. And then they're going to be facing a team in Michigan that might play a quarterback where they're going to run the ball 55 times in Alex Orji. That's a fascinating matchup with Texas. I think all of us would assume Texas would go up there and beat a rebuilding Michigan team just because of everything that Michigan is having to replace both on the coaching staff and on the field. But boy, that's a fascinating matchup, if you will, in terms of the way Michigan wants to operate offensively and what Texas's questions might be on the defensive side.
So sometimes your greatest gift becomes a bit of a burden.
Oh,
I mean, do you think a face like this is going to be a scientist? Please. So when
I was made for radio.
And at Ohio State, I've made this argument. They're so good at wide receiver, it softened the program up. Is that you can't, Ryan Day can't be at practice, have Marvin Harrison to the right, have first-round DBs, nobody can guard his receivers, that Ohio State, because they recruited Brian Hartline, the best receivers in the country 5-6 years in a row, they've become a softer program. Now, it doesn't punish them against anybody not named Michigan or Georgia.
I was just going to say, there's only...
Yeah, that's right.
And to be fair to Ohio State...
They had Georgia beaten.
They had Georgia beat, and then I would even make an argument. Last year, I saw them toughen up right in front of my eyes against Michigan.
Because I felt like
remember in the third quarter, they drove down primarily running the football on that Michigan defense.
But they did.
I would just say, watch out, though. I don't know. If I were you, I would think about hedging that opinion. Chip Kelly runs the ball so well
now
everywhere he's been. And now they've got the 2 best backs in the country.
Yeah, it's different, though. So only Georgia and Michigan exposed it. Well, Jim's gone. Michigan's not going to look quite the same. So
Man, you're off Michigan quick. This is going to be a fascinating year.
I quit very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a quitter.
That is so good.
I'm a quitter.
You're a quitter.
I'm one of the best quitters of all time.
Man.
It could be anything. Outside of Ann, I quit stuff constantly.
Let me tell you this is just a quick tangent. And I'm not proud of this, but it's funny. I played baseball. I used to dip. Don't dip. This is not like, don't do it, right? It's hard to quit. And so people would be like, hey, you need to quit. And I'd be like, my dad didn't raise me to be a quitter.
You said that?
Dumb excuse.
Yeah.
I was such an idiot.
You believe it or not.
But you're a quitter.
My God.
You just jump right off.
I literally.
Train's moving, gone. Colin's out.
I used to have a friend. He was a poor tipper. Never went out again. I had a nutritionist once. She said, you got to stop eating 13 yogurts a day. It's bad for your stomach. Haven't had a yogurt since. Anyway, a little bit about me.
Man, let's see, people tell me donuts are bad, but I love them, so I still eat them. Okay, so Michigan. You're out on Michigan. Now Harbaugh's gone. Let's get back into it, because I like this thought process
I'm not out on Michigan.
I mean, you're out on Michigan. That's fine. Own it. Like, if you're going to quit, quit.
I'm kind of out on
Well, don't half quit.
All right, I quit him.
There we go. See? Now we're in. Just baited him right into that. That was great.
Let's go to this, though. Let's segue to this, because I'm very excited for the new Big Ten.
I am, too.
I quit the Pac-12 very quickly, for the record.
Listen, the Pac-12 quit the Pac-12 very quickly. Let's be honest.
This Colorado program you're connected to.
Mm-hmm.
I went all in with Deion. I said, nobody talks Colorado. People will talk Colorado. He'll get players there. It feels a little bumpy. They're getting into their feels. I feel like Colorado's doing a lot of this. Hey, there's a new guy in town. And everybody's like, shh. You were terrible at the end of the year. You look like old Colorado. With Deion, you get the hubris and the confidence. Love it. But you got to back it up. You got to win games against good teams.
What would you say about a 400% increase in wins? Is that backing it up? Okay. I'm just asking you. That's just yes or no. Yes or no. Is a 400% increase in wins backing it up?
Depends on where you start.
That's not a yes or no, Colin.
It's pretty good.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Well, then, aren't we getting somewhere? I would just make the argument that when evaluating Colorado, you can't just evaluate them in the current state of the race. You have to look at the starting line. And they were, and I said this to their athletic director, whom I love, Rick, I love you. I said to Rick George, Rick, you're the most irrelevant program in Power 5 and the worst program in Power 5. He tried to argue with me, and I stopped him. I was like, no, that wasn't a question. That was a statement, right? And the point of hiring Deion Sanders, among other things, was relevance. Deion has hit it out of the park at Colorado. When you look at what they were, a one-win, irrelevant program, and what he has turned them into. All right, I understand that it went wild early in the season and it didn't finish the way that people thought it was going to finish based on what happened at the beginning of the season. However, look at what he did from an economic standpoint for the program, for the athletic department, for Boulder overall, and for the university. Did you know that the university, and by the way, there are people at Colorado, and I know who you are. You don't even like to look at things like this. At Colorado, they got a 68% increase in applications last year. 68%. Majority of those from out of state. That is a huge revenue boost to the school, to the university, to the academic arm of the school. Deion has worked. He has worked. And now, I think the play on the field is going to start to catch up with some of the expectations or hubris you're talking about that maybe he's even put out there. I think that Colorado, if they're able to protect Shedeur Sanders, they have a huge game week 2 against Nebraska on the road.
That's a tough one.
That's going to be a tough one. There's no doubt about it. I think that Colorado can win 8 games. I think that they can double their win total from a year ago. I think that they could maybe even win 9 games. When you look at their schedule and you look at the entirety of the Big 12 Conference and what they're going to have to play, there is a scenario where if Shedeur Sanders is healthy and they maintained some of that health on the outside with guys like Travis Hunter, who I think is one of, if not the best overall player in college football, there's a chance that Colorado's competing to go to the Big 12 championship game. If they were to get in that game, they would be 60 minutes from the college football playoff. It's not out of the realm of possibility. So these people, which you just did, which is fine, they start to say, like, I don't know if it's really working. I don't love it. You know, he's got his hat backwards. I don't know if that's good. But that's kind of the vein that people don't like Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is working at Colorado. And I think that the play on the field this year is going to be pleasantly surprising for everybody. And if it's not, then I'm wrong. But that's what I believe is going to happen.
I have no problem. You know, people have often said, Colin, you're an elitist. And my argument is,
yes,
the first part of that is elite. Thank you.
Thank you.
So 12-team playoff.
That's amazing. I'm stealing that. It is such a good line. What are you going to do?
What a criticism. You elitist.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Rather good at my job. So the point is, of a 12-team playoff, I wouldn't be bothered. 5 SEC, 5 Big 10, Clemson, and some meatball from the Big 12.
Why does the Big 12 have to be a meatball? Why does Utah have to be a meatball? They're going to be the favorite in the Big 12.
I like Utah.
Okay, so rephrase that.
Okay.
And Utah.
5 SEC.
There you go. Come on, continue.
5 Big 10, Clemson, and Utah.
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Okay, you and I are both elitists.
Yeah. When it comes to college football, yes, I have been an elitist for a long time, and that's because there is a vast difference between what goes on at the Group of 5 level and what goes on in power college football.
The other thing where I will credit these big schools, Southern schools, Big 10, nobody ever talks about this. There is a difference playing in front of 97,000 people and 28.
Well, of course.
28 might as well be an art opening in Miami. I mean, it's like a boat show. Who gives a rip? You go to 104,000.
It's like the Catalina wine mixer.
Yeah, I mean, who gives a rip? We got baked salmon and a Pinot. I'm at 98,000 at Camp Randall.
I totally agree with you.
So I always give the big schools, if you can come out of the Big 10 or the SEC, play those road games at the Horseshoe,
of course.
Camp Randall, the whiteout in Penn State and go undefeated, you're in.
The average team in a power conference, and specifically the SEC and the Big 10 this year, is not an easy out. That's the average team.
That's right.
I'm not talking about your big boys, you know, like the big games. I'm talking about the average games. That's not an easy out. I would not be opposed to that. Now, that could never happen because they would immediately be sued. That would just be anti-competitive. So in order for that to happen, the smaller schools have to go do their own thing from a postseason standpoint. I'm not opposed to that, by the way.
By the way, Holiday Bowl's wide open.
Hey, man, why you got to bring the holiday? I like
Sun
the Holiday
Bowl, El Paso.
There you go. Can you throw the Sun Bowl under the bus?
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.